Hi, it's Cava Faulkner, Elk Grove Living Trust Attorney, Sacramento Estate Planning Attorney. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of The Daily with Christine. This video is for you if you have family members and you are worried about protecting your assets. So why you want to stay tuned until the end, because we're going to talk about how you can create asset protection to make sure that the assets that you leave for the people that you love, especially your kids, are protected from their creditors. You're going to want to stay till the end because you're going to learn, well, what happens if you don't have this kind of planning? Where is the risk? It may be someplace you're not even aware of. So check out my Christmas lights. I'm the only one in the neighborhood who still has their Christmas lights on, but I just love it. I know it's February, but anyway, makes me feel good, and I hope it makes you feel good too. So let's get started. So why do you need to talk about creating asset protection? So this video is for you, and it will probably speak to you if you work with a financial advisor, if you have investment accounts, if you have brokerage accounts, if you have life insurance, and you have retirement accounts, that you really want to make sure if something happens to you is protected for your loved ones, including your surviving spouse, but especially your children and or whomever your beneficiaries may be. So this year has been particularly popular for dynasty trust planning, which is a generational wealth transfer strategy in trust planning that ensures that your children, usually, but it could be other beneficiaries, nieces, nephews, other loved ones, can receive your assets in a creditor protected irrevocable trust. And so why is that so important? It's so important because, well, frankly, so many things can happen in people's lives that you may not even really contemplate at this point in time. Many people know how important asset protection is. It's, another word for asset protection is insurance. But beyond insurance, there are so many uncertainties in life. And so I want to tell you a story about a married couple. And I'm going to circle back at the end and tell you how this relates to married people in California. So, married couple had been married for a long time. They actually had, worked most of their lives and were in their 50s, had paid off the mortgage in their house. The wife was retired, husband was still working, and during the days when she was retired, she got involved in a gaming app. And in the beginning, it was really innocent, just something to pass the time and for fun. But over time, she totally got hooked and it became such a big deal that she tried to stop. And so she became kind of a gambling addict on this gaming site. You may know something like this. I know I have a lot of friends who over the years have invited me to Candy Crush. And I know how those sites work. They lure you in for free and then you start paying little bits and pieces here, and then before you know it, you're paying big bucks. So in this particular case, this woman over time had desperately tried to stop, and the company kept luring her back in with various perks and promises of all sorts of goodies. And so she just couldn't give it up. And at the end of the day, after probably 4 years, she had accumulated $400,000 of debt. Her husband knew nothing about it. And of course, you can imagine the havoc that wreaks on a relationship if and when this spouse finally finds out about it, which inevitably they do. And so this brings me to, well, how does this impact people in California? So when I heard this story, I was thinking about the fact that California is a community property state, and as many states are, but a community property state. And so even when your spouse is racking up debt that you know nothing about, it is still your responsibility. And so this gets me to, why is dynasty trust planning and asset protection planning so important? Well, when you're talking about your children, imagine what could happen if they are married. You leave them an inheritance of all of the assets that you've worked so hard for. They commingle those assets together with their beloved spouse, and then their spouse starts racking up debt that they know nothing about. Well, all of those assets that you worked so hard for could be up for grabs if they cannot pay their creditors. Or even if they can, maybe they have to liquidate a good portion of the assets that you left for your child to pay off that gambling debt. Not a pretty picture, not something that is even your own child's responsibility or doing. Nevertheless, in California, as a community property state, they could have liability. Likewise, if their spouse incurs student loan debt during the marriage, whether your child knows about it or not, your child could still be on the hook. And so these are just some scenarios. There's many, many more that you can probably think of, but this one in particular is something that many times is kind of a stretch for the imagination to think about this happening. But any number of things can happen in a marriage with your child and their spouse. And if they commingle the assets that you leave them, or you leave them assets outright in their own name, and they have creditors, or they have to file bankruptcy, those assets have to be declared, or would be found by a plaintiff's attorney. If there was some kind of litigation, they would be found in an asset search. They would come up under your child's name. And if there was liability or litigation going on, those assets could be taken in litigation. They would have to be declared in a bankruptcy proceeding, and could potentially be used in a creditor situation. So I don't know if you've ever thought of that. Maybe you know someone who's been in that situation, sadly, and it can be shocking. But if you want to protect your children and make sure that the assets that you have worked so hard for in your own life can be passed down to especially to your kids. You can do this with your spouse as well, but especially to your children, in a way that all of the assets are protected. They are available to your children to use for themselves, for their families, but they are protected and wrapped up nicely in an irrevocable dynasty trust, asset protection trust, that they can protect those assets from creditors, litigation, and grow those assets inside of the trust. It is a handy, handy tool to make sure that you can stretch those assets that you've worked so hard for out for as long as possible to really benefit multi-generations. So that's why it's called multi-generational wealth transfer. It's really about planning well into the future to make sure that generations down the road can benefit from what you started, the hard work and the intent that you put behind growing your wealth, and really get the most benefit from that. So yes, so if you don't have this kind of protection, if you don't have this built into your planning, then clearly your assets can be lost in litigation, to creditors, in bankruptcy, and it can be lost really and wiped out in a blink of an eye, really. And so it would be good to know that you have these options and to consider whether this could be a huge benefit to you and your family. You don't have to consider yourself one of those uber wealthy or highly affluent people to get some real benefit from this. I work with many clients who value asset protection, and they're not in the highly affluent, category, but they still really want to make sure that their loved ones have this protection and cushion, and a more sophisticated plan that allows the descendants to benefit for as long as possible from this generational wealth that you have started to grow. So yes, if we can help you, if you have any questions about this, are curious about it, definitely reach out to us. We're here to help. Please subscribe to our channel, like our content. That tells YouTube that we are doing a good job of engaging our viewers, and they like the content and find it interesting and important. So like our content, comment, and we'd be happy to give you more information that you'd like to hear. Thanks so much for tuning in to The Daily with Christine, and we'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.